Hello everyone, welcome. This is going to be episode 1 of my family history. The book is found on Amazon. It's Poor and Rich, and the subtitle is Royal Family, and the author, which is me, is Esmerce Austin. And I have a little quote on the front here which says, "Love for siblings, love for family means all," which is exactly true to this day. Our family, our parents instilled in us to love each other. And it's a lot of us, we have different personalities, but at the same time, our love outweighs the differences in our personalities, and we are always admired the way we live, the way we get along with each other. If someone buys a new car, it's like the car belongs to all of us. We are so happy about their accomplishments. If someone buys a new house, we are happy too. If someone's child is successful, we are so happy and so proud. So, and the book is dedicated to Marcel and Esme Austin. Their love and dedication have inspired me to write this book. They were rich in love and poor in wealth. They were positive thinkers, and their dreams always came through. And that's the dedication. The book copyright in 2015, and it's on Amazon, so you can pick up a copy. And I have an acknowledgement that says, "Thanks to the most important people that helped to create the pride and joy of this book, the Austins. God gave Marcel and Esme the gift to love their children, and their gifts were passed down to the children so that they are there for each other." And we are definitely there for each other when we can and if we can. So today I am going to go through, I'm going to go through chapter 1, and if I get the time I will go through chapter 2 also, but I'm not even sure if I might complete it. The chapters are very short because each chapter depicts something from that period, that time, that person, whoever it is. So it's not like a book that's with fiction, and sometimes in one chapter there's not much to tell, so I just make the chapters short. And the book was also written not to sell, but to preserve the family history. But I think there are some really interesting things in there that others can learn from. And this is why I decided, well, now I am going to do something else, and I am just going to go through the book. I have also written 2 other books. I have some books that I started writing which I have not yet published. So I am going to see how the interest flows with these books, because people don't really read books anymore. They are mainly, audiobooks or television or cellular phone, like things clip up on cellular phones, or they research things on cellular phones. But maybe this is a good idea where someone can actually listen to the contents of the book instead of having to pick the book up and read it. And when I go through it, I am also going to elaborate on some of the things that I had written in this book. So let me begin, and this is going to be series number 1. This is the first one, and I am going to number them so I go along, that if you find it interesting, you will not miss out on anything. So let me begin. As a family, the Austins are dispositioned to extend their love and hospitality to anyone who needs it, and that's a fact. It was just yesterday my older son was telling my younger son that I know the entire family used to live in New York, and almost all of us moved from New York, and we are out exploring, moved to different areas since we all got older. And he was just telling the younger one about when we were all living in New York. Some of my siblings are now deceased. God rest their soul. So he was telling them that if a friend needed to move and one of the uncle had a truck, he would give the truck to one of his nephew and say, go and move this person. Because he had the truck, he extended his kindness to a neighbor, a friend, and then he would delegate the moving to his nephews, and they didn't say no. They grew up that way to learn to help people. So this is where this comes in. From the time they were growing up, they were taught by their great-grandmother, Christiana McLeish White, that all humans are equal and should be treated fairly. This kindness, sincerity, and love was passed down to Arabella and then Esme. Arabella was my grandmother, and I was not totally raised by my grandmother, but Esme was the only daughter of 4 kids, and she was very close to her mother. So now the kids were always at her mother's house because they were living close, and in the mornings, if my mother doesn't have anything planned work-wise, she would go to her mother's house and she would spend the whole day there until almost time for us to get home from school. The Austin's children, even though no longer in the 18th, 19th, or 20th century, their best cherished moments are the ones where all children were welcomed. Now, like in America here, people take stray animals in because of the love for animals. My grandparents and great-grandparents didn't have much, but at the same time, they always see within themselves that there was always somebody who was worse off than them, and they would always take them in. In terms of wealth, they did not have much, yet whatever little they had, they were always willing to share with others. There were always kids going in and out. I can remember as a child with my grandmother, and not so much my mother, to be honest with you, because my father because of his personality, he didn't too care for having a whole crowd around. But my grandmother's home was always full. Now I'm trying to remember where we slept, like when we slept over at my grandmother. I can't remember where we slept because there were so many kids in that house, and yet still my grandmother was she had a very small family herself. For a time in those ages, she had 3 children plus 1 adopted from her husband, one of her husband's child. and yet she always had a house full of children. Christiana's parents were slaves. This is my great-grandmother. Her mother suffered from very poor health, and because of this, she died when Christiana was just a child. This was a time when women in slavery experienced ill health during their pregnancies because the slave owners cared very little about their well-being, unfortunately. They were put to hard work during pregnancy, and shortly after they gave birth, Christiana's father, and they had to go back to work shortly after they gave birth. Christiana's father wasn't able to give her the attention she needed. Growing up, she watched the heartaches of other women and children, either dying or having stillbirths. As an adult, she was a free woman. She was a free woman because she was no longer in slavery growing up as a child. But nothing much had changed then, and because of the circumstances around her era, she herself had a lot of stillbirths. Even though slavery was abolished, there was still that hierarchy where different, like the slave owners still believe they own these people. And they usually have them do labor work for them and maybe provide them with some food, no payments. And things were almost the same. So they had to go to work early just the same, and then she had most of her kids died. Then now Christiana, or Christina, sometimes I say Christiana, some people call her Christiana, some people call her Christina, vowed that whatever she could do for women to let their children survive, she would. And she learned from watching Nana assist with deliveries and the errors they made to help other women. They made a lot of errors because people weren't going to the hospitals, kids were being born at home, and some of these people didn't know what to do. So it's either the kid or the mother or both would end up dying. When her daughter Arabella, which is my grandmother, started having children, she delivered all her 3 children safely. She only had 3 births and 1 adopted. Esme was one of the 3 children she delivered. And this helped a lot of women over the years. It is safe to say that without Christiana or Arabella, there would not have been an Esmerce, and the history of the Austin's family would not have been told. So my history would not have been told. And this book is, some parts of this book is going to be a little juicy. But I am proud to be born in this family, and I am lucky to be born in this family. And there were difficult times in the past, but then when I look at life and I think that if you cannot appreciate where you're coming from, then where you are in life is meaningless, because there's a pretense. And I don't know how some people just go around pretending, erase their past and pretend that their past never happened. But for me and for all my siblings, we are very proud of our past. And I would go home, I would go to Jamaica. And when I do go to Jamaica, I am living in the United States now. When I go to Jamaica, I always visit where I come from. And not only visit where I come from, I visit where my grandmother lived, where life began. There's no house where my grandmother lives anymore, but I still go just look at the land and the fruit trees and everything like that. And yet I go home and I would ask about someone, and there are maybe 90% of the people who left there, who went to school with me and left that area, never return. I don't know how you can live the rest of your life and not remember where you come from, but to each his own. So I'm not going to knock anyone. It just amazes me how someone can really forget